Smoke rose from the burning fields. Human soldiers were running through the mud, trying to escape the sharp claws of the enemy. The enemy didn't look human. They were taller, stronger, and faster. They had fur-covered arms and glowing yellow eyes. Some called them beastmen, others whispered, werewolves. A young human soldier named Mason crawled through the rubble, blood on his face and dirt in his mouth. His helmet was missing. His rifle had run out of ammo. His squad was gone, killed, captured, or worse. He didn't know how long he had been crawling. Maybe hours, maybe minutes. His arms were weak. His legs hurt. But he didn't stop. Not until he saw the edge of the forest. He dragged himself into the trees, hoping the enemy wouldn't follow. The leaves were wet. The air smelled like smoke and fear. Mason pressed his body against the ground and stayed still, too tired to move. Then he heard something behind him, soft footsteps, not human. Slow, careful, coming closer. He reached for his knife, but his fingers wouldn't close around the handle. A low growl vibrated in the air. He turned his head and froze. She was crouched. Only 10 feet away. Her body was tall and powerful. Her skin was smooth but covered in soft black fur along her arms, shoulders, and legs. Her long tail twitched behind her. Her glowing yellow eyes locked onto his. She looked young, maybe his age. Her ears twitched. She sniffed the air like a wolf tracking prey. Mason knew she could kill him easily. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped forward. He held his breath. His fingers shook. She knelt down beside him and tilted her head. Then she did something strange. Touched his chest, gently, curiously, and gave a soft whine. He expected pain, but she didn't attack. She sniffed his blood, touched his face, then looked into his eyes like she was searching for something. He whispered, "Why are you helping me?" She didn't answer. She couldn't speak his language, but her eyes were full of thought. Not like an animal, more like a person. She leaned down and sniffed his neck again. Then she let out a soft, strange sound, a quiet moan, full of something Mason didn't understand. She looked sad, lonely, needy. She grabbed his arm, pulled him slowly to his feet, and helped him walk. Mason didn't know where she was taking him, but he couldn't fight back. He didn't want to. She wasn't like the others. She was different. The forest was dark and quiet. She led him through twisted roots and glowing plants. Strange animal calls echoed in the distance. Mason's legs nearly gave out, but the werewolf girl didn't let him fall. Finally, they reached a cave hidden by vines and rocks. The girl pulled the cover aside and helped Mason inside. The cave was dry and warm, with furs on the floor and small bowls filled with glowing herbs. It wasn't just a hiding place, it was a home. She laid him down on soft fur and looked at his wounds. Her claws were long, but her hands were careful. She used strange blue powder on his cuts. It stung, but he didn't cry out "Dot" as she worked. She made small sounds, whines, growls, and gentle hums. Mason couldn't understand the words, but he could feel the meaning. She was calming him, comforting him. Later, as he lay staring at the ceiling, Mason asked again, "Why are you helping me?" The werewolf girl crawled closer. Her golden eyes watched him. Then, in a broken voice, she whispered a few words in English. "Just 4. Need strong mate. Now?" Mason blinked. "What?" She repeated, slower. "Need strong mate." She touched his chest, then her own belly, then she moaned again, softly, sadly, desperately. Mason's heart beat faster. She wasn't attacking. She wasn't even angry. She was asking. The war had taken everything from both of them. Now this strange, wild girl, part beast, part woman, was looking at him like he was her last chance. She curled up beside him on the fur, her head resting near his shoulder, breathing soft and warm. She closed her eyes like she trusted him. Mason stared at the ceiling for a long time, listening to her breath. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, something had changed. She had chosen him. Mason woke to soft warmth against his side. The werewolf girl was still curled beside him, her long black tail gently twitching. Her fur-covered arms were wrapped around his, as if afraid he might leave. Her breathing was slow and peaceful. For a moment, Mason thought it had all been a dream. But the pain in his leg was real. The strange herbs on his chest were real. And the girl, the beast woman, was very real. He moved carefully. She stirred, ears twitching, then opened her glowing yellow eyes. Her gaze locked on his face like she had been waiting for him to wake. "Still here," Mason whispered. She let out a soft noise, a low, happy hum, and gently pressed her forehead against his. Mason didn't understand her language, but her eyes said enough. She was glad he hadn't run. She was glad he was still alive. She sat up and pointed to his leg, then made a sharp gesture with her claws. He thought she was warning him not to move too much. Then she crawled to the back of the cave, opened a small pouch, and returned with more herbs and a strip of clean fabric. She worked silently, bandaging his wounds again with care. He studied her face as she worked. Her features were wild, sharpened ears, beast-like eyes, fur-covered limbs, but still beautiful. Not human, but not monster. Something in between. Something gentle. After finishing, she sat beside him again, watching his face. She tilted her head and tried again in broken English. "You. No go?" Mason blinked. "You want me to stay?" She nodded. Then, with both hands, she touched her stomach and spoke softly. "Need pups. Strong pups. You strong." Mason's heart pounded. He didn't know what to say. She didn't say it with lust. It wasn't dirty or wild. It was something else, sad, serious, honest. He sat up a little, groaning from the pain. "Why me?" The werewolf girl looked down, then slowly placed her hand over his heart. "Kind." Mason didn't speak for a moment. The cave felt warm, safe. Too safe for a man who had nearly died hours ago. He asked, "Do you have a name?" The girl blinked. She seemed to understand. She touched her chest and said, "Vetra." "Vetra," he repeated. "I'm Mason." She smiled a small, shy smile with sharp teeth showing just a little. Then she leaned forward, her nose brushing his neck as she sniffed him again. It was strange, but somehow comforting. She curled up beside him again. Like before, tail wrapped near his leg, arm resting across his chest. Mason was too tired to move. And for the first time since the war began, he felt safe. But outside the cave, the world had not forgotten them. In the distance, voices echoed, deep, growling voices. Heavy footsteps crushed leaves and snapped branches. Someone or something was tracking them. Vetra's ears twitched. She sat up quickly, her body tense, nostrils flaring. She moved to the cave mouth and sniffed the air. Her tail puffed out. She let out a low growl. Mason forced himself to sit. "What is it?" Vetra growled again, her body now between him and the entrance. She didn't need to answer. The war wasn't over. Not yet. She crouched low, grabbed a spear made of sharp bone and black metal, and looked back at him. Her eyes were serious now, full of warning. She wasn't just a lonely girl anymore. She was a protector, and something was coming. Vetra stood at the cave entrance, her long black tail still, her ears raised high. Her body didn't move, but Mason could feel the tension in the air. She gripped the bone spear tightly, her eyes watching the forest beyond the vines. The growling. Voices were getting louder. Mason pushed himself up slowly, holding on to the cave wall. His legs still hurt, but he couldn't stay lying down. "Who are they?" Vetra growled softly without looking back. Hunters. Male clan. Her voice was cold now, no longer soft. She sniffed again, then hissed, "They smell me, smell you." Masons. Heartbeat faster. What did they want? Vetra turned her head slightly. "They want me. Take me. Herd me. Take pups." He went silent. She looked at him then, her golden eyes full of pain. "I run from them," she said. "I not belong to them. I choose. I want own mate. My choice." Mason nodded slowly. He understood. She was being hunted by her own kind, and now they were hunting him too. The vines moved. Vetra didn't wait. She leaped forward like lightning, spear raised. A dark shape stepped through the leaves, a beastman tall and muscular, with thick fur, red eyes and long claws. He roared and swung his arm at her, but Vetra moved too fast. She spun low, slashed the back of his leg, and leaped again. Her spear hit the side of his neck. He fell hard, blood spilling on the rocks. Another one came through the vines, snarling. This one was even bigger. Mason tried to help, grabbing a rock, but his leg gave out. He crawled toward the wall, heart racing. Vetra faced the second beastman. He growled words Mason didn't understand, but Vetra shouted something back in her own tongue, something wild and angry. Then they fought. Claws against spear. Fur against flame. Vetra's movements were sharp, fast, trained. But the beastman was strong, and he knocked her back against the cave wall. She growled, got up, and lunged again. Mason saw her hand bleeding. Her spear was cracked. She was losing. Without thinking, Mason reached into the herb pouch nearby. He didn't know what most of it was, but he found something wrapped in sharp bones, a small black stone, glowing faint blue. Vetra had used it earlier to stop his bleeding. Mason threw it at the beastman's face. It hit his eye. He screamed, fell back, and Vetra struck with all her power straight into his chest. The spear cracked fully, but the beastman fell and didn't move. The cave went quiet. Vetra stood shaking, chest rising and falling, covered in blood and sweat. She looked at Mason. He looked back at her. She dropped the broken spear and walked to him slowly. Her hands trembled. "You fight for me." Mason shook his head. "You protected me first." She leaned down and touched his face again softly this time. She whispered something in her own language and pressed her forehead against his. Then she said, "Now we run. More will come." Mason nodded. She helped him stand again. He leaned on her as they left the cave. Vetra picked up what little they could carry, her herbs, a knife, a piece of cloth, and they disappeared into the dark forest. The trees closed around them. Mason didn't know where they were going. He didn't even know if they had a real plan. But as Vetra led him through the cold mist and quiet woods, her hand tight in his, he knew one thing: she had chosen him. Not because she was weak, but because she was free. And now they were running together. Asterisk. Vetra led Mason through the thick forest as the cold night air wrapped around them. The stars above shined through the trees, and strange alien insects made soft buzzing sounds. Mason leaned on her as they moved, his leg aching, but he didn't complain. Vetra walked with steady steps, never letting go of his hand. They didn't speak much. There was danger behind them. After some time, they reached a small hill with tall grass and a large fallen tree. Vetra sniffed the air again. "Safe here," she said softly. "Rest now." Mason sat down slowly, his leg burning. Vetra knelt in front of him, looked at his wounds, and pulled out more herbs. She didn't smile this time. Her face was serious. "You hurt bad," she whispered. "I'll be okay," Mason said, though he wasn't sure. Vetra looked into his eyes. "You strong, but not like us. You break easy." He gave a weak laugh. "Yeah, I'm just human." She tilted her head. "Not just. You fight. You help me. You protect. You kind. That is rare." She touched his chest again, where his heart beat. Then her hand moved lower to his stomach, and she whispered, "My body is ready. Yours too?" Mason felt his heart pound again, but her voice was gentle. Her eyes were soft. It wasn't lust. It wasn't controlled out. It was a question. She wasn't forcing. She was asking. "I don't know," he said carefully. "I don't even know what your people do, or what comes after." Vetra looked down. "We do not wait. If female comes of age, she is taken by clan. Male mates with her. No choice." Mason frowned. "That's not right." Vetra nodded. "I ran. I not want that. I want my own. One I choose. One who sees me. Not like a thing, like a female. A mate. A mother." She placed her hand over her belly and breathed in slow. "I need pups. My body says time. But I want pups with you. Only you." Mason felt something stirred deep inside. Not just desire. Not just confusion. Something more. Something real. He had lost everything in the war. His squad. His home. His reason. But now this strange, wild girl looked at him like he mattered again. He placed his hand over hers. "If we do this, we stay together. We protect each other. You're not just a mother to pups. You're someone." She looked up at him slowly, then nodded. "Then yes," Mason said. "We try." Her lips parted slightly. Her eyes filled with warmth. She leaned forward, rested her forehead against his, and whispered something soft in her language, a sound like a song. Then she curled beside him again, wrapping her tail around his leg, resting her hand on his chest. Her breathing slowed. But Mason couldn't sleep. He heard something again, distant howls, far off in the woods. Not close, not yet. But they were hunting. "They won't stop," Mason said softly. Vetra opened her eyes. "They will follow. They smell me." "We can't keep running forever," he whispered. "We'll need help, shelter, allies." Vetra thought for a moment. "Maybe. There is one old human base, far north. My people never go there. Too cold. Too far. Can we reach it? If we move soon, before sun comes." Mason took a deep breath. "Then we go. Tomorrow." Vetra nodded. She kissed his cheek once, then pressed her face into his neck and let herself sleep. The forest stayed quiet, but the night wasn't over, and the hunt had only begun. The morning air was cold and sharp. Mist floated low across the ground as Mason and Vetra moved through the tall grass. She walked ahead, her sharp eyes scanning the trees. Mason followed close behind, his leg wrapped tight with cloth, still sore but holding. They hadn't slept much. The howls from the night before had come closer. Vetra said they needed to move before the hunters found their trail again. Mason asked, "How far is the base?" "Far," Vetra answered. "3 suns walking, if no trouble." Mason nodded. "Even though 3 days sounded like forever, we'll make it." Vetra looked back at him and gave a soft hum. "We make it. Together." They crossed a shallow river, cold water soaking Mason's boots. Vetra moved like a shadow, fast, light, silent. He admired how her muscles moved under her fur, strong but graceful. She looked like a hunter, a protector, but sometimes when she turned to help him, Mason saw the girl inside the beast. Soft eyes, small smiles, gentle touches. She wasn't just running. She was building something with him. By the time the sun was high, they found a small ridge with thick bushes and mossy rocks. Vetra stopped and sniffed the air. "We rest here." Mason sat down slowly and rubbed his leg. "How long do you think before they catch up?" Vetra didn't answer. Her ears twitched. Her tail stood still. Then she said, "Too late." Mason turned. Behind them, 3 beastmen stepped out from the trees, taller, heavier, and snarling. Their red eyes locked on Vetra. The biggest one shouted something in her language, then growled like thunder. Vetra growled back, stepping in front of Mason. The leader pointed at her belly, then pointed at himself. Mason didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. "They think I stole you," he said. Vetra didn't move. "You didn't." "Steal. I gave myself." The beastman snarled again. Vetra held out her arms. "No clan, no male. My choice. He is mine." The three beastmen spread out. One moved left, another right. They were preparing to circle. Vetra whispered, "Run." "No," Mason said. "I won't leave you." She looked into his eyes, wild and soft at once. "I fight better if you live." Mason grabbed a sharp stick from the ground. "Then we fight together." The moment broke like lightning. One beastman charged Vetra. She ducked and kicked his leg, slamming him into a rock. Mason swung his stick at the second, who grabbed it and snapped it in half, but Mason punched him in the face. With all his strength, the third tried to grab Vetra from behind. She slashed his arm with her claws and bit his shoulder. Mason wrestled with the second one, falling hard to the ground. The beastman roared, pinning him down. Mason couldn't breathe. Then Vetra tackled the beastman from the side, throwing him. "Off, Mason!" She roared in a voice deeper than Mason had ever heard. The last beastman stood, bleeding from the neck, and turned to run. Vetra pounced. But Mason grabbed her arm. "Let him go," he said. She growled low, then slowly nodded. The beastman disappeared into the forest. The fight was over. Mason sat on the ground, breathing hard. "That was too close." Vetra knelt beside him. Her hands were shaking. "They came for me. But also for you. They won't stop, will they? No, they want control. They don't believe in choice." Mason looked at her. "Then we take ours." She blinked. "What do you mean?" He touched her hand. "We don't run anymore. We get to that base. We build something, a real home. Not just for survival, for us." Vetra looked down, then slowly smiled. "You want home with me?" "With you," Mason said, "and with whoever comes next." Her hand moved to her belly again. She nodded. "I will give you pups," she whispered. "But not just to survive. To live free." They stayed there a little longer, resting together. No more words, just a shared breath. A promise. Tomorrow they would reach the cold lands. Tomorrow they would find the old base. And the future would begin. Asterisk. Snow fell softly from the sky. Mason held his coat tight around his chest as he looked out across the icy valley. Vetra stood beside him, her black fur dusted with snowflakes, her tail swaying gently in the cold wind. Behind them, the old human base stood half buried in ice and stone, but still strong. They had made it. It had taken 3 long days. They crossed rivers, climbed frozen hills, and escaped 2 more patrols. Mason had fallen once, tearing his leg open again. Vetra had carried him half the way. She never gave up. Not once. Not even when her body shook with cold. Now they stood at the top of the world, looking down at the empty base. "We made it," Mason said softly. Vetra nodded. "It is quiet. Good place." Mason pointed to the large round door. "That used to be a supply station. Might still have power." Vetra touched the wall with her claws, then looked back at him. "Will we live here?" "If it works," Mason said. "We can build something. Shelter, heat, a real home." Vetra looked at the snow. Then she stepped forward and pressed her palm against the scanner by the door. Nothing happened. Mason moved beside her. "Let me try." He wiped off the scanner, then pressed his hand on it. The old machine blinked. A green light flickered. Then the heavy door groaned open. Warm air flowed out. Lights flickered on inside the hallway. Machines hummed deep within. Vetra's eyes widened. "Magic," Mason laughed. just old human tech. They walked in together. The place was dusty, but safe. Old bunks, broken tools, wires hanging from the ceiling. But it was shelter. It was hope. Vetra sniffed the air. No other scent. We are alone. Mason sat down against the wall and let out a deep breath. Then this is our place. Vetra came close, knelt in front of him, and touched his cheek. We can stay? He nodded. We can stay. She leaned into him, pressing her forehead against his. I feel it. Feel what? She took his hand and placed it over her belly. Life, inside. Mason stared at her. Already? She smiled soft. Warm, full of something ancient and pure. Your pup, my pup. Strong. His heart swelled. All the pain, the running, the fighting, it was worth it. He looked into her glowing eyes. Then we protect this place. For them. Yes, she whispered. For them. They worked for days to clean the base. Mason repaired old lights and machines. Vetra gathered roots and hunted small animals outside. At night, they curled together in one of the warmest rooms, her body wrapped around her. Breath soft against his neck. No more running. No more fear. Just the quiet promise of tomorrow. As weeks passed, Vetra's belly began to grow. She moved slower now, more careful. Mason did everything he could to help her. He learned to cook strange roots. He watched over her while she rested. He made her laugh. He gave her peace. One night, she lay beside him and whispered, You gave me more than pups. You gave me freedom, a name, a home. Mason held her close. You gave me something too. A reason to live again. She smiled. Then we are even. Outside, the snow kept falling. But inside, behind old steel walls and warm blankets, a new life had begun. Not just for Mason, not just for Vetra, but for the future they chose together.